The next project we're going to be working on is called the Contour Line Project. It's called the Contour Line Project because we're going to be using line to draw and create the contour of different objects and forms. So we're going to be talking more about what this project will look like and then what contour line actually is as well in this presentation. But contour line is the line that defines the outside of a 3D form. And a 3D form is anything that has height, width, and depth. So really any object. So not only are we going to have the line that defines the outside of that 3D form, but also the inside of the 3D form as well without any shading. And you can vary the lines and make them thick or thin to make things more interesting, but again, no shading in this contour line project because we're going to strip everything down to the basics and really look at how to make things look three-dimensional and how to get a really accurate, good drawing of that form, making it look realistic and like it has lots of details. So one way of doing that is adding and outlining everything with this contour to get things detailed as possible, and then having highlights and shadows outlined as well. Lines on the inside and the outside of the shape are going to be drawn first. And then you're going to look for areas of highlights, reflections, and shadows to outline within the shape. So looking at this picture, you can see not only is the outside of the pine cone contoured or drawn, but you can see all of the details inside as well. So some of these areas where there's lines, and then areas that are lighter or have highlights are outlined, and then areas that are really, really dark or have a shadow are outlined as well. And you can see the thickness varies on the line stroke, which we'll be working on too. So here's a few more examples. You'll have opportunities to take things further and do drawings that are more complex, such as a portrait. Or if you're someone who wants to start simple and you really want to master this contour line design, there's objects that you can do that are a little bit more simple to get started with and then see how you feel as we progress. The purpose of contour line is to draw things actual size. So you're going to pick an object to start with and then draw things the size they actually are to really focus on the detail. So by drawing things actual size or larger, it's going to force you to pay closer attention to kind of the variation of a line and areas where it might be smooth versus areas where it might be bumpy and how you can outline those and really show detail. And the more detail you can show, the more realistic your contour drawing is going to become. You can also use the thick side of your Sharpie to outline around the object and then the thin side for highlights and shadow detailing inside of the form, which we'll work on too. The first step, which we're going to be practicing a little bit before we get moving on actual contour drawings, is going to be blind contour. So we're going to be starting creating your drawings completely blinded. So you're not going to be looking at your drawing at all. You'll have no idea how it looks until the end. Now the purpose of this is not to have a beautiful drawing. Obviously, since you're blinded, there's going to be issues with things not lining up and things overlapping. The focus of this is to force you to see the object for what's actually there in front of you and not what you think is there. So we're going to talk more about that and the purpose of blind contour, and we'll practice it. But this is really just an exercise like you would practice things if you're in a sport or a different class. It's just an exercise, a way to practice your drawing skills before moving on to your actual drawings. And again, this will force you to be more aware of what's actually there in front of you and less concerned about how your drawing looks. So here's an example of blind contour. Again, there's a lot of issues with where things overlap, but what you can tell and what you can see is this person really focused on detail and having small variations in the lines versus just assuming that an eye is a circle. So they really looked at what kind of lines are actually on the person since they're staring at them the whole time that they're drawing the picture. All right, so after we do blind contour, we're going to be doing the actual contour where you outline and look at your paper every once in a while. But we're also going to take things further and add cross contour to your drawings. Cross contour is really going to emphasize the form. So we'll talk more about that, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing with those steps. So here's some examples of cross contour actually drawn on the objects. So you can see that when you're following the form of an object and drawing something with your lines and the direction that you're shading, it's going to emphasize and really make things look more three-dimensional. So here's those cross contour lines drawn on an actual piece of paper versus the object. So you can see that the shell looks really 3D because of the way that they're placing the lines and following the form of the object. And then here's a few more examples for you to see that cross contour. And then just to give you again a picture of this entire project, we're going to also add color. So we're going to work on shading, making areas darker, some areas lighter. And then the very last step is going to be choosing a couple of different background techniques to practice, and then you'll apply those to your project as well. So you can see there's a good amount of background practice techniques that you can choose from, with lines in the background, collage, a vignette, making the corners of your picture darker, using text, and then a watercolor drip texture in the background as well. So that's just a way to take your project to the next level and do something more and further with your project. And then here are just a few final project examples. You can see for the final project, you'll have a couple of objects that you're going to draw, and then you're going to add color and a background to these.